Is Japan facing the kind of shortages potentially and an energy crisis like their counterparts over in Europe? And if the heat wave continues in China and hydropower is being depleted, China's going to have to import more fossil fuels, and that puts even more strain on an already very tight market.
What we're seeing in Asia markets is a bit of a split between the countries that can afford the high LNG prices we're seeing and those that can't. So, for example, in the case of Japan, you're right, they have no domestic production, so they are completely reliant on imports of LNG. And high LNG costs are going to be passed through to the country. So it's going to be an expensive winter for Japan. But they can afford to do it. So far, if you look at high-frequency data on Japan imports of LNG, they haven't really dropped. They have stayed in line with last year's levels, if not above. Now, if we compare that to what we've seen in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, those are more price-sensitive areas that have given up its spot LNG purchases. They simply can't afford such high energy costs. Now, when it comes to China, it's an interesting point because China can afford buying expensive commodities when they need to. What we've seen this year, though, is that China's balance of natural gas is very well supplied. Because of the COVID lockdowns that we saw in the spring, industrial activity throughout the year has been very sluggish to rebound. And because industrial demand is the primary driver of LNG demand within China, this has actually kept China LNG demand on the low side. It's been down year on year, all year long. And the drought situation you mentioned exacerbates that. We would think that, well, if you don't have hydro, maybe you need other fuels to compensate for it. But the Sichuan region doesn't even have that much gas-fired generation. Yes. And you end up in a situation where you curtail electricity to industrial users, thereby lowering even more your demand for natural gas. So it's a bit lucky for Europe.